My name is Michael, and today we are going to talk about the importance of both atmosphere and immersion in horror video games. They are both key elements to really help us to feel the fear that the creators of the video games create for us. They want us to be immersed and really be a part of the story that they're trying to tell us. And the game that we will be using to discuss this topic will be Metro 2033, which is a first-person shooter survival horror video game, which was actually developed by 4A Games, which is a small, little-known Ukrainian company, and published by THQ. It came out in 2010 for both PC and the 360. And the story is, as you saw at the beginning of this video, an adaptation of Dmitry Glukhovsky's novel called Metro 2033. So the first obvious difference that we can see here between Metro 2033 and most other survival horror video games is that it is in first-person view. Now, back in 2010, this was a fairly uncommon thing to see, while nowadays, with Resident Evil 7 and PT, or the playable trailer, we are noticing an increased trend in putting games in the first person. Now, why is that? And the answer is quite simple. It is because it adds to the immersion of the video game. And the reason why immersion is so important is first we have to understand the definition of immersion, which is a state of being deeply engaged or involved, otherwise known as absorption. Now, that is according to dictionary.com. So the more absorbed, engaged, or involved we are in a horror video game, the easier it will be for the creators of the video game to sell the lie of the danger. Obviously, we are not truly in danger, but the game wants to trick us into believing so. If the game is able to successfully trick us into being afraid, then it has done its job. It has frightened us. It has given us that adrenaline rush. And Metro 2033 does everything it can in its power to really sell the immersion. The creators even went as far as to create a parallel difficulty that removes the HUD almost entirely, requiring you to focus and to rely on the in-game hints inside the game world itself. As we see here in this video, the character has a watch on his left wrist. If you've been noticing, the light on that watch blink blue and go off, and keeps blinking on and off. Every time the light is blue, that is hinting to you, or your character, that you are visible. And if the light is off, then that is indicating that you are in darkness, or you're in stealth mode. You cannot be seen. And they've even included some other things on that watch, such as a little dial, if you see the green ticks, which are a countdown of your gas mask. Now, the list goes on as far as the things that they do to kind of help with that visual immersion, such as on the gas mask, if you sustain damage, the edges of the screen begin to crack. You can also see around the edges that there's little water droplets because you are looking through a mask. And if you kill enemies nearby, blood gets on the mask, and then you can wipe it off. There's actually a button specifically designed for that, so you can wipe the gas mask off. Now, we will be talking about the most important aspect of immersion for a horror video game, and that's not the visual aspect that we've been covering thus far, but instead the auditory. Now, to quote an article titled Things That Go Bump in the Night, How Games Design the Sound of Horror by Caddy McCarthy, in the article, quoting Nicholas Swanberg, she says, "To me, horror is all about not having control of your surroundings and to find the contrasts that make the player lose that control. Sound is the perfect tool for that. We are constantly aware of what we see, but what we hear is perceived on a much more unconscious level." And there are two ways that you can really enhance the sound in a video game to increase the feelings of fear or immersion. And ways that you can do that is either through silence, where you really just get a feel for the video game, you get to hear the sounds around you, or through music and scores, much like what you'd see in movies. Ways that sound can really increase the immersion would be like through breathing, or sounds in the environment nearby that are actually happening in real time. You can always have sounds in the background like a pipe falling or creaking pipes, which is a very common thing to do in most horror video games, just to kind of give an atmosphere. But reactionary sounds, sounds that actually matter, sounds that you have to pay attention to and you have to focus on, are the sounds that really increase the fear. So let's go ahead and take a moment to turn the volume up here on the game and just kind of get a real good feel for the atmosphere by paying attention to the sounds. Now, these two things, the visual immersion and the auditory immersion, add together to create the most important aspect for horror video games, and that is an atmosphere. Without a carefully crafted atmosphere, the game is no longer scary. And a lot goes into creating this atmosphere, whether it is through tiny little things such as the light on the watch, or the breaking of the gas mask, or the blood on the gas mask that has to be wiped off, or even the sounds throughout the game. But all of these things add together to create that creepy atmosphere that we know and love, that makes our skin really crawl. It's not the images alone that does it, it's not the sound alone that does it, but the combination of the two. And the last element that I'll be covering today on atmosphere is the setting. Setting is basically the level design, just the way that things look around us. And that setting is what helps to sell the fear. It helps add to the atmosphere. And Metro 2033 does a very good job of following a vast majority of the classic horror tropes. As you can tell, everything is in a very large state of disrepair. Since the event that marked the beginning of Metro 2033 was that of a nuclear explosion or nuclear war, the Earth's surface has been scorched and is now in a nuclear winter. And in previous clips, we were able to see the very tight quarters of Metro 2033. Since it is a game that is largely based in the metro tunnels of Russia, there are a lot of very confined claustrophobic areas that we are placed, and oftentimes we meet horrors or gruesome monsters, such as the one we're seeing right now, in those spaces. And that type of confinement helps also add to the overall atmosphere and fear of a horror video game. So hopefully by the end of this video, I've helped you to further understand the importance of both atmosphere and immersion in a horror video game, and how really without them, horror video games couldn't really exist.
Who is it? Surrender and you won't get hurt. I swear!